I'm doing a rack and pinion today on my 2002 Toyota Tacoma. I'll show you why. Hopefully you can hear this. And I will show you what it looks like now at the rack. Right, so the truck's fixed, rack and pinion's out on the bench. So the reason this is called a rack and pinion is because the way this gear works. This is the shaft that goes up to your steering wheel. And then these two tie rod ends, that goes to your left wheel, that goes to your right wheel. And as you turn the steering wheel, these move in and out. And the gear set inside of here, basically you have a long shaft with teeth in it. I'll show you in a bit. That's called the rack. And then this is called the pinion. That's why they call the whole thing a steering rack and pinion, sometimes a steering gear. And it's a way to translate basically rotational movement from the steering wheel into linear movement. So you have an outer tie rod end here. There's basically a ball and socket joint in here, like your elbow or your knee. Those can go bad. They need to be greased, but they do fail. Then you have an inner tie rod, which is also a ball and socket here. These can go bad. These need to be greased. And basically, like a brand new one would be so stiff that when you drop it, it doesn't fall. It stays in place. Now, something like this isn't necessarily worn, but it's also not new. And so even if something on your truck is not worn out and clunking or clacking, replacing it will make everything a lot stiffer. So this is how the movement works. This is that long shaft with the teeth that I was just explaining, and in here is the pinion gear. Now, my issue is a little bit hard to show on the bench because you don't have the forces and the torque. I just have my arms. But basically, this shaft can move up and down in here. I don't know if you can hear that, but I'll disassemble it now. You'll also have this big nut on the back of most of them, and that applies a certain amount of back pressure to this whole assembly. If you were to tighten this down, the relationship between these teeth and the pinion would get super tight, and that would probably fix some of your slop issues. So it's possible that taking this off and adjusting the pretension will help. But a lot of times if it needs to be adjusted, it's because something's worn, and that'll probably only be a temporary fix. If you do it too tight, then you'll basically be grinding away the metal. So it's not, sometimes it's a fix, but in some cases it's kind of like a cheap fix, you know, to just temporarily tighten things up because something else is worn. So I'm gonna get some of it disassembled and we'll come back to it. Okay, so I'll show you what's going on in here. So basically on this side of the shaft, it's smooth. Oops. Oh my word. I just shot hydraulic fluid all over not only myself, but my garage. Ha! Whoops. I thought I had most of it out. All right. Well, that's what YouTube's for. Anyway, you have a smooth backside of the shaft. And one of the things that is critical control is the backlash and tension between the toothed side of the shaft and the pinion. So they do that through this big roller, which sits here. Well, it sits here, but it rolls. And then you have this spring and this pre-tensioning cap. And the more you tighten this down, the more the spring applies pressure to what is almost a piston, although it doesn't do any sealing, and then it puts pressure on there. So as these things get worn out, I'm going to wash this really good. We're going to see if this is worn. It's possible, again, I could have improved the condition by tightening this down, but my personal experience, and you can leave comments below if you have a different one, my personal experience is that generally adjustments like that only mask a problem. They're adjusted from the factory for a particular, gear set. And there would be a specification where, basically the turning torque would have to be so much, and then they would know that this is an adjustment. And generally speaking, as these things wear out, it's not been my personal experience that adjusting them helps. As they wear, they basically just need to be replaced. So we're going to pull this out now and see what's inside. I got the rest of it disassembled. There's a couple pieces I wasn't able to disassemble, and it's trash day, and the guy's going to be here soon. I really want to get this out into the bin. That's the kind of person I am. So anyway, so yeah, here's another look at the outer tie rod end, which connects to your knuckle over by your tire, and then your inner tie rod, which has this ball and socket. Both of these can wear out, and that's why you have inner and outer. So you basically have 4 tie rods, you could call them. Um, One thing I wanted to point out, so this is the pinion shaft. Basically, this goes to your steering wheel. This interacts with this gear set here. And this is the housing. And there's more going on here than just a connection between the steering wheel and the shaft. There's also, this is where the hydraulics come into play. So these 4 rings are basically oil seals that keep the oil in this channel and in this channel. And I already removed the lines, but the lines went from here and here. So basically this is in and out from the power steering pump, and then in and out from this control valve, which goes to these 2 connections. These 2 connections here. And basically in here is a sealed cylinder and piston. In fact, it's part of what is keeping this thing from coming out right now. I can't completely pull this out. But basically what you can imagine is that as you begin to turn the steering wheel to the right, fluid comes, let's say, to this port and pushes this direction, which makes this shaft easier to push in this direction. And then when you turn to the left, like this, oil flows through this other port here and pushes it in this direction. Now, I'm not sure how this comes apart. I don't think it's, it might be pressed or welded into place, and that's why I can't get it out. I didn't see any snap rings or anything, and I'm just kind of done messing with it. I know what it looks like in there. It's basically a shaft with more of these on it, and then a cylinder, so that can be leaking. That's what can cause stiffness in the rack. I also can't get this apart at the moment. I don't want to pull out my press. I'm just not feeling up for that. And I don't know exactly how turning to the right causes the oil to flow through the one and turning to the left causes it to flow through the other. I must admit that. It's been a long time since I learned about racking pinions in school and stuff, so I don't remember that exactly, but that's basically how it works. Last thing I'll say is if you want to be a better mechanic or a better engineer, or if you're a parent with a young kid who seems mechanically inclined, education does not have to be that expensive. You can go to a junkyard and you can buy a rack and pinion for fairly cheap. In fact, if you're really nice as a parent, you might even say, my child is trying to learn about mechanics. Do you have a bad one that you would give me? And taking the stuff apart will teach you so much, especially if you stop and ask questions like, okay, why is there 4? You know, why is there holes on each side? Why is there 2 ports? Why are the, you know, why are these grooves not cut perfectly perpendicular to the shaft? Why are they on an angle? You know, understanding helical cut gears and things like that. There's just so much to learn if you take things apart and you slow down and you ask questions, and then maybe you Google those questions. Curiosity is the requirement for learning, not a university, not a good teacher. Yeah, there's a little check ball in there. You can hear it in there. So just, you know, my encouragement, if this kind of stuff looks intimidating to you or you wish you knew more about it, you know, when stuff breaks, take it apart. And another source is go to your local automotive shop and just say, you know, hey, I'm interested in mechanics. My son's interested in mechanics, my daughter, whatever. Could I have some old rack and pinions or steering gears or engines or whatever? They're normally pretty accommodating. I know our shop was. And it's a good way to get an introduction to some of this stuff. And there's basically no risk of breaking something because it's already a broken part. So anyway, I hope that was interesting for someone. If not, I get it. Give it a thumbs down. Instead, go check out a guy named AVE, Arduino versus Evil. He takes apart a lot of stuff. He knows a lot about machining and manufacturing. He's really interested. Give this a thumbs down. Go check him out. Otherwise, have a great day.